What's up, everyone? Today I want to show you the in-person autographs I've collected over the years. Like a lot of you probably did, I started collecting baseball cards in the late 1980s when the hobby was exploding, and in addition to Topps, Donruss, and Fleer, we now had Bowman, Score, and Upper Deck start producing massive amounts of cards. This is a time period now known as the junk wax era. I grew up in California, and at local malls in the late 80s and early 90s, there were quite a bit of sports card shows that had players signing autographs, and due to the area I lived in, these tended to be mostly former Dodgers and Angels. I did my best to put these in chronological order from when these were obtained. Luckily, my mom did take pictures at several of these of my brother and I with the players, and wrote down the dates. First up is Maury Wills. This is signed in October 1989 at a mall. Wills played 1959 to 72, mostly for the LA Dodgers. He was a 7-time All-Star, 3-time World Series champ. This is a 1987 Topps card, which is the first set I ever collected. This is a turn back the clock card from 25 years earlier. In 1962, Maury Wills won the NL MVP during his 4th year in the majors. He was the first player to steal more than 100 stolen bases in a season at 104. The most interesting fact about this turn back the clock card is that it depicts a 1962 Topps card that does not exist. Topps didn't produce a card for Maury Wills in 1962 or for his first 8 seasons. His first Topps card wasn't until 1967. Next up is Terry Clark, which was from November 1989 in a mall. He pitched for several teams from 1988 to 1997, including 2 years each for the Angels and Astros. He finished his career with only 232 innings pitched. Next up is Dusty Baker. This was signed in January 1990 at an appliance store. He was an outfielder from 1968 through 1986, mostly on the Braves and Dodgers. He hit 242 home runs and 1,981 hits. He's best known to younger collectors as former manager of the Giants, Cubs, Reds, and Nats. He's a 3-time NL Manager of the Year, all with the San Francisco Giants. This is Kevin Gross, who was also signed at the same electronics store. He was a pitcher from 1983 to 1997, mostly for the Phillies and LA Dodgers. He finished his career with 142 wins. Reggie Smith signed in January 1990 at a mall. He was an outfielder from 1966 to 1982, mostly for the Red Sox and LA Dodgers. He finished his career with 2,020 hits and 314 home runs. This is Chris Gwen. He signed February 1990 at a mall. He had a 10-year career, was mostly a bench player for the LA Dodgers, and only had 263 hits. Certainly not as successful as his brother Tony. Luis Medina, signed February 1990 at a mall. He played from 1988 to 1991 for the Indians and only had 163 plate appearances. Next up is Lenny Harris, who signed June 1990 at a mall. He's a third baseman and outfielder with an 18-year career, mostly for the Reds and Dodgers. He finished his career with 1,055 hits. Ken Forsch signed November 1990 at a mall. He was a pitcher from 1970 to 1984 for the Astros and Angels. Finished his career with 114 wins and 1,047 strikeouts. Next up is Mike Scioscia. who signed February 1991 at his appliance store. He played from 1980 to 1992. He's a former Dodger and two-time World Series champ. Finished his career with 1,131 hits. And he was also the catcher hired by Mr. Burns on The Simpsons episode Homer at the Bat. He was manager of the Angels from 2000 to 2018 and World Series champ in 2002 with a win over the Giants and Barry Bonds. Also got him to sign this promo photo. Tommy John signed June 1991 at a mall. He was a pitcher with a 26-year career from 1963 to 1989, four-time All-Star, mostly with the Yankees, White Sox, and LA Dodgers. Finished his career with 288 wins. He's also the namesake of the surgery on the elbow that so many pitchers get. Next up is Hall of Famer Gary Carter, who was elected in 2003. He played catcher in right field. He's an 11-time All-Star. He finished his career with 2,092 hits, 324 home runs, and 70.1 WAR, which is the second highest among catchers after only Johnny Bench. In his 19-year career, he played mostly for the Expos and Mets. This was his only season with the Dodgers. This was signed at a game in July 1991, which was also a no-hitter by Mark Gardner of the Expos. Next is Dick Schofield. This was signed August 1991 at an Angel game. He was a shortstop who played from 1983 to 1996, mostly for the Angels. He finished his career with 989 hits. This is on a 1991 Fleer, which is one of the ugliest cards of all time. Next is Steve Yeager, signed November 1991 at a mall. He's a catcher from 1972 to 1986, mostly for the LA Dodgers. Finished his career with 102 home runs. He was the 1981 World Series co-MVP with teammates Pedro Guerrero and Ron Cey. In 1976, Yeager was injured when teammate Bill Russell's bat shattered as he hit a ground ball, and a large jagged piece from the bat slammed into the throat of Yeager, who was in the on-deck circle. The bat shard pierced his esophagus, requiring surgery. After the incident, the Dodgers trainer invented and patented a device that hangs from the catcher's mask to protect the throat. It's now worn by most catchers. Next at a card show in December 1992 was Hubie Brooks, Dave Hansen, and Steve Garvey. Brooks played 1980 to 1994, mostly for the Mets and Expos, two-time All-Star and two-time Silver Slugger. Hansen played 1990 to 2005 as an infielder, mostly for the Dodgers, and had 466 hits. Steve Garvey, known as Mr. Clean, played 1969 to 1987 as a first baseman for the Dodgers and Padres. Finished his career with 2,599 hits, a 10-time All-Star, and 4-time Gold Glover, and the 1974 MVP. At that same card show was Tony Gwynn and Eddie Murray. Tony Gwynn played 1982 to 2001, his entire career for the San Diego Padres. He was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2007. He was a 15-time All-Star, 8-time batting champ, finished his career with 3,141 hits, and he hit .394 in the strike-shortened 1994 season, which only had 7 weeks left. He may have been the first player since Ted Williams to hit .400. Eddie Murray played 1977 to 1997, mostly for the Orioles and LA Dodgers. He's a Hall of Famer in 2003. He was the 1977 Rookie of the Year, 8-time All-Star, finished with 3,255 hits and 504 home runs. He's one of only 6 players with both 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. Next, I have a yearbook from the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes. They're a minor league single-A team that used to be affiliated with the Padres. This is from July 1993, which was their inaugural season. Most of these players never made it to the MLB. Next is a baseball signed by Bob Feller, which was from August 1993, when he did a signing at the Quake Stadium. Feller made the Hall of Fame in 1962, had 266 wins, 2,581 strikeouts. He was a pitcher for the Cleveland Indians from 1936 to 1941 and 1945 to 56. He lost 4 years to military service in the Navy. He was the first American professional athlete to enlist only 2 days after Pearl Harbor. He was also one of the fastest pitchers ever and reached 107.6 miles an hour in 1946. This would be the fastest recorded for 28 seasons before any pitcher would pass him and take over the #1 ranking for fastest pitch ever thrown. That was by Nolan Ryan in 1974. Next is Lee Lacy, signed at a mall in October 1993. He played from 1972 to 1987 as an outfielder and second base for the Dodgers and Pirates. He had 1,303 hits. He's a member of the 1979 World Series champ Pirates. I didn't have a card of him at the time, so this is just a flyer from the show, which is pretty cool to have now. You see there's 70 tables here, which is about double what the normal card show is today. Next is Larry Sherry on a 1960 Topps card. He was a pitcher from 1958 to 1968, mostly for the Dodgers and Tigers. He had 53 wins and was MVP of the 1959 World Series. Next are Angels players Chad Curtis, Scott Lewis, Tim Salmon, and Clyde Wright, who were signed at a mall sometime between 1992 and 94. Curtis played 1992 to 2001 as an outfielder, mostly for the Angels and Yankees, had 101 home runs, and 2-time World Series champ for the Yankees in 98 and 99. Lewis pitched 1990 to 94 for the Angels and only had 178 innings pitched. Tim Salmon played 1992 to 2006 as a right fielder for the Angels. He was the 1993 Rookie of the Year and 2002 World Series champ. He finished with 299 home runs. Clyde Wright pitched 1966 to 1975, mostly for the Angels, and finished with 100 wins. Next, I got a baseball and a card signed at a baseball camp in my hometown. Lenny Randle was a utility player from 1971 to 1982, mostly on the Rangers, Mets, and Mariners, and had 1,016 hits. Ken Landerow played center field from 1977 to 1987, mostly on the Dodgers. He's a member of the 1981 World Championship team and had 1,099 hits. Next are a bunch of photos signed by the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes at a bank in 1994. Most of these guys never made it to the MLB, and the ones that did only played a handful of games. However, there was one exception, Derek Lee, who had a really nice career and played 1997 to 2011, mostly for the Marlins and Cubs. He was the World Series champ on the 2003 Marlins, and he had 50 home runs and led the NL in batting in 2005 for the Cubs. He was a 2-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glover, and finished with 331 home runs. I stopped collecting cards around 1994 and didn't really keep up with sports until a few years ago when I moved to the Bay Area. Next up is my favorite autograph that I own, which is from my favorite player when I was growing up, Will Clark. This is signed June 2014 at AT&T Park. I got to meet my childhood baseball hero. It was at his charity Autism Awareness Night before the game. Will did an interview in Triples Alley and took questions from fans. I saw he was wearing baseball pants and had batting gloves in his pocket, so I asked him if he took batting practice earlier. He said he hits every day, but doesn't let anyone see him. It was amazing to meet my favorite player from when I was a kid. Will Clark is nicknamed The Thrill. He played first base from 1986 to 2000, mostly for the Giants and Rangers. He was the 1989 NLCS MVP. And he finished his career with 2,176 hits, 284 home runs, and a .303 batting average. He finished in the top 5 in MVP voting 4 times in 5 years. In his first at-bat, he hit a home run off Nolan Ryan in the Astrodome. Rich Aurelius signed January 2018 at a mall. He's an infielder from 1995 to 2009, mostly for the Giants. He's a one-time All-Star and Silver Slugger, and finished with 186 home runs. Finally is Andres Torres, signed September 2018 at a mall. He inscribed it with 2010 World Series champs. He's very friendly and took time to talk to us and interact with everyone, which made the line pretty slow. He's an outfielder from 2002 to 2013, mostly for the Giants and Tigers, and a member of the 2010 World Series champion San Francisco Giants. So that's it for my in-person autograph collection. I know not all of these are from great players, but it's awesome that I have several from Hall of Famers and All-Stars. It's always fun to collect autographs, and I hope to be able to get a lot more in the future. All of these here were free, though some did require an admission fee. Unfortunately, there's not as much opportunity for signings now as there was back in the late 80s and early 90s, when there were card shows nearly every month. There's only a few card shows per year in my area now, and when these do have players signing, not many of them are free. The others are quite expensive, and so far, I haven't found any players that I like that much to pay what they're asking. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, in order to stay updated on my other baseball videos. And if you are already subscribed, I appreciate you continuing to support the channel. Cheers!